You know, since seeing them in Avatar: The Last Airbender Day of Black Sun Part 2, I have loved the concept of the zeppelin. It's just so funny to me that one day we were like, yes, big balloon full of flammable gas surrounded by thin fabric, what could go wrong? And then it proceeded to never go wrong. And there have been many a video talking about the times it never went wrong, but weirdly enough, there's no video talking about the first time it never went wrong. The first ever airship disaster. But that is where I drop in. Ah! So originally, I had this whole thing here talking about the real first airship disaster, which was the Dutchland in 1897, but in all honesty, there's like no documentation around it, so it'd be really boring to talk about. The only things of note are the following. It was a semi-rigid airship, that's important. Its creator, who had a hilariously stereotypical German name, was on board along with a mechanic, and one day during a test flight, it exploded, killing both the creator and the mechanic. So because there's not really that much to talk about, and I am able to twist around the definition of the word first, we're instead gonna look at a far more interesting first airship disaster. And floating in from stage right is just that, the Zeppelin, the first Zeppelin to have a disaster, and weirdly enough, it actually shares a fair amount of similarities with the Dutchland because A, it involves Germans, and B, those Germans died. Say hello to LZ-14, later renamed to just L1. But wait a minute, Joe, you say impatiently, what makes this the first airship disaster? Well, for one, I'm counting a disaster as something that involves at least one fatality, so that removes any other Zeppelin crash that happened before L1. And then we've already gone over to Dutchland. Yes, technically it is the first airship disaster, but it would make for a boring video because there's like nothing to talk about. Also, it was a semi-rigid airship. L1 is a fully rigid airship, also known as a Zeppelin, and they're just more airshippy in my opinion. Now, some of you may be hearing all that, and you may say something in line with, that title seems a bit clickbaity because you've just used two excuses to call L1 the first airship disaster. But in the wise words of me right now, shut up, here's a gecko. Now, our specific Zeppelin here, LZ-14, was built by Ludwig Ferdinand of the Luftschiffbau Zeppelin GmbH company, the primary location for all of your Zeppelin needs. The design of L1 was more or less basic in terms of 1900s Zeppelins. The only thing of note for our story is, rather than having an enclosed area for the crew, it was more of an open gondola. As mentioned, while it was birthed into the world as LZ-14, after being transferred to the German Navy, it was creatively given the name L1, as it was the Navy's first Zeppelin, and the letter L in 18th century font kind of looks like a ship if you removed a big pillar on the back. Now, whilst most commonly associated with the most badass way to bomb someone, the Navy's Zeppelins were mainly just used for reconnaissance. So if a ship ever came too close to them, they could yell at it or something or another. This meant L1 was destined to patrol over the North Sea, an area renowned for its calm and tranquil weather, a perfect environment for a delicate and temperamental balloon. So on the 9th of September 1913, L1 would enter the skies to partake in a combat exercise with the Navy's ships. It would depart from the city of Hamburg and head possibly in one of the cardinal directions, I failed geography, towards Heligoland Island. Little did people know though, this would be its final flight, and in a moment so tragic, it's hardly to be believed in cinema, the final ascension of L1 would only be its 68th flight. I hate this timeline. But you want to know who I don't hate? You! And because of that, you should subscribe to my channel today. It really helps us out. I don't normally put these call to actions in the middle of the video, but I needed a transition, so here it is. At first, everything seemed to be going rather well. They passed over Heligoland Island, surely not a bad omen or anything, and continued southwards for another 16 nautical miles without anything of note happening. And then, not too long later, something did happen that needed to be noted down, and on the note it was just the words, "Oh no." You know, I got a good feeling about this whole German Navy thing. I think it's got a promising future ahead of it. Sir? What is it, First Lieutenant Peter Wend? Well, there appears to be an ocean storm gathering strength not too far away from us. We should probably turn back to the mainland now. Why would we do that? Excuse me, sir? The ocean is down there. We're up here in the sky, and an ocean storm is a ship's problem, Peter. We are a ship, sir. Zeppelin, big difference. Don't make me pull out my Steplum joke that I deleted from this script. Please don't, sir. Listen, I don't want to argue the facts about airship autonomies. I just think, listen here, Peter, I don't appreciate taking lip from a German man who doesn't have a stereotypically hilarious German name, or my name isn't Captain Goodfire. You know, Peter was actually a really common Germanic name in historical Germany. Now, the good news for L1 was the captain actually didn't get sucked out of the ship. He was fine. Well, not fine later, but he was fine for now. And also, because it was a reconnaissance Zeppelin, it had the ability to recognize the storm that was upon it. That is where the good news ends. Once fully enveloped in the storm's grip, it quickly became apparent the Zeppelin was not designed for this level of defined fury. It was tossed up and down endlessly, resulting in some men being thrown from the gondola down into the ocean below. The captain attempted to regain control, dropping all ballast and forcing every bit of power out of the Zeppelin, but the ship was just not strong enough to fight against such a ferocious storm. The killing blow would come when a strong gust of wind carried L1 up to 1,500 meters into the air, and not being designed for this level of elevation, along with the damage or race sustained and the cold temperatures causing the gases inside the balloon to contract, the Zeppelin would stall before beginning its descent back down to Earth, eventually plummeting headfirst into the ocean, breaking its back upon entry and separating into two pieces. In the confusion, a majority of the men would sink with the gondola, however a few were able to escape and cling to some of the wreckage. When all was said and done, of the 20 crew members, 13 of them would drown, with the rest being rescued by torpedo boats. Sorry, I mean L-boats. So, given at this point in history, Zeppelins were firmly in their pre-2025 Jack Black's gonna be in a film phase, it was quite a bit of a shock to bear witness to the first fatal crash from the perspective of the public. Big balloon over one of the most dangerous seas in the world seemed like a bad idea, but as I'm sure you can all probably guess, this disaster did not stop the Zeppelin train. Nothing stops the Zeppelin train, it always carries on forward. And the German Navy especially would hold true to this idea. Despite losing their first one in a pretty bad disaster, they would continue using Zeppelins throughout World War I, and despite me clowning on them a few times, they actually seem to do their job pretty well, all things considered. There's a nice little video by the YouTube channel The Great War, which dives more in depth in the overall use of Zeppelins during World War I, and I would absolutely recommend you go and watch it. After rewatching all of my videos first, of course. Speaking of which, it's time to do some shilling. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, it's really important, helps us grow, all of that stuff. I need it, it's all I have, please. And if you want to drive home to your friends and family just how much you support me, you can head over to my Patreon and do the same thing these lovely people on screen did. That would be really cool. Also, as a final thing, let me know what you thought of my funny little drawings I used in parts of these videos, because I'm gonna be frank, I am absolutely sick of using the stock photos I just steal from Shutterstock. It's just way too annoying, like trying to do different poses and always got different shirts, and the website itself is just absolutely abysmal. I might just switch over to doing this instead, but I'm not sure yet. So if you have any ideas about it, please leave your comments down below. I would love to read the ones that solely agree with me and ignore the ones that don't. Anyway, hope you have a good day. Bye bye.